Thank you for coming today. Today you're at a webinar presented by FirmWorks. I'm Kyle Hagan. I'll introduce myself in just a second. It's going to be about file compliance and reporting, and obviously the date is just for the record. So who am I? I'm Kyle Hagan. I'm the product owner for FileViewer, and I work with the other teams at FirmWorks as well. Again, if you guys cannot see the screen or cannot hear me, please mention it in the chat, and I will do my best to fix that. I've been working in Salesforce for quite a while now, working on products and other things like that. And so I have probably about 8 years of knowledge in the Salesforce ecosystem. Humble brag. No, I'm just kidding. Just so you know who you're talking to or listening to today. And then who's FirmWorks? FirmWorks is a company we created to try to take all the knowledge we had about the ecosystem and the problems we see that were very common and try to offer solutions for people on the App Exchange that are solving very specific targeted issues that people have mentioned to us in their day-to-day, things that are not super easy to work with in Salesforce, or things that just need to be better, or things that, you know, kind of felt a little abandoned. Our product suite right now is FirmWorks Files or FileViewer. That's our files product. You're going to see a lot about that today. We also have nearby our FirmWorks Geo, which is our mapping product. It's like a very light mapping tool that lets you see like locations and things nearby other things. And finally, we have a product called Note Manager, FirmWorks Notes, that is meant to make the note experience on Salesforce way more functional. And the main draw there is you can search notes. But today we're going to be talking about FileViewer and file compliance, but I can say file compliance all day long, but let's talk about what that means as opposed to me just saying file compliance like you know what it means. So when we talk about compliance, what exactly are we talking about? Compliance can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but what we're referring to is the policies or rules or laws that someone or company has to follow in order to participate in the ecosystem they're in, or to not be found liable, or any of those other kinds of terrible law terms that make people scared. Really, at the end of the day, though, the two terms I like to fill with compliance is being accountable and having protection. So those things are really important in the ecosystems we work in and live in every day, because we want to make sure that we have the accountability with all of the data and the files that we collect, you know, things like HIPAA or GDPR or like ISO. Those are all different types of auditing and compliance systems that people need to use. And those are industry standards, as well as people having rules internally for their company to say, hey, like, in order for us to function as a company more effectively, we need to make sure that we have these 5 pieces of data and these 6 documents, and we follow these processes. That's also a form of compliance. So there's lots of different types of compliance. There's government, industry, internal, but at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is accountability and protection. Also, being compliant means that you're ready for anything at any given time, whether that be an audit or just people asking for stuff that you might need to provide to them in order to prove or be accountable for a different process. Being audit ready at any time is a really good thing, because you never want to be caught, for lack of a better euphemism, caught with your pants down whenever an auditor comes to your door and is like, hey, you need to show me these 10,000 documents to make sure that you're compliant. It's way better to be like, cool, I have those, as opposed to here's the room or here's the file cabinet, go look for yourself. And finally, that internal compliance and that industry compliance can give you a lot of insight into process visibility. So looking at something that you have your employees or you do on a day-to-day basis that allows you to function, there's always ways to improve those processes. And in order to be able to know those processes well enough and how effective they are, being compliant to a process is a really good way to do that. So knowing how often you're sending a document out, knowing how often pieces of data that you want to have are missing, or, you know, how much you're over collecting and things you don't use. That's all types of compliance that maybe not industry or government level compliance, but are still really important when it comes to trying to understand your business better. So really today, though, we're going to specifically focus on file compliance. Salesforce is our ecosystem we're in. It stores a lot of data, but it also stores files, and files are a huge part of a lot of different compliance architectures. And I'm going to take a second just to talk about some examples of file compliance that you may not know about or you may know about, but we're going to talk through them right now. So first one is HR documents. So if you're not in the HR team, you might not know what it requires to onboard somebody, or the amount of documents it takes to actually have somebody be like a, either a legal employee or an employee for your company. But there's anything from employee handbooks to employee agreements to, security training documentation, or harassment seminars and things like that. You need to have a lot of documentation in order to prove that somebody is like able to work for your company and in the country you're in or in the industry you're in. So whether that be things like, if you're in the government industry, your security clearance, there's lots of different types of documents and certifications that need to be stored against a potential user or an employee that could, really mess up your company if, someone who's not compliant or not security certified is doing something they're not supposed to do. That could even go for things but as seemingly trivial as certifications to work on a specific thing, being industry certified. So another process is sales process documentation. So we talk about like opportunity life cycles and sale life cycles. There's a lot of different pieces to a sale. It's not just as like, oh, cool, we call someone and close a deal. There's, lead generation could have documents. Maybe you want people to upload things because you want them to be able to like give you information about what type of lead they are. That could include documents, or it could just include like a form, but there's documents that could be involved there. There's also documents when it comes to interacting with somebody when you're about to share IP. So if you're about to show a demo to somebody, you might need them to sign an NDA in order for them to participate in the demo and even just participate in the sale of your product, because you're going to be showing them protected information. Once you get through that demo phase and you're about to sell to them, you might need to send them a proposal or a statement of work. That's another document that you'd want to capture, because it's a point in time. It's something that you'd want to be able to identify potentially later as part of that sale. And that's really important to be able to go back and be able to identify those things. Once you close a sale, or especially if you're working in the SaaS ecosystem, you might want to have an MSA or a partner relationship agreement or services agreement. There's lots of different terms and conditions when it comes to providing a service or providing a utility or a software as a service that require agreements. EULA being a huge one for a lot of gaming. If you agree to those things, you're agreeing to things. So always make sure that you know what you're agreeing to, I guess, is like a side note. And then even after that, you might have stuff that happens after you close a deal that needs to be translated to other people inside your organization. An SOW moving into other parts of your company is really important. So there's a lot of documentation just in sales alone. Finally, let's talk about application process documentation. So there's a lot of different application processes. There's loan applications, insurance applications, job applications. All of those require a huge amount of documentation to even get through. I mean, you're talking about, even from a loan documentation standpoint, you might need to show collateral. You might need to show like proof of address, or even do things as like proof of insurance, depending on what the loan is for, or like a home loan, you need to have homeowners insurance to make sure that you can get your mortgage. There's stuff like that happens as far as loans go. For like jobs, you might need to have a job application filled out, a resume, proof of citizenship, even a driver's license or identification. Those are all types of documents that can be stored inside of Salesforce. And for insurance, that's another thing too. You might need to show like previous proof of insurance to show what your deductibles were. There's a term for the thing, but I can't remember it, but there's a term for like the sheet that says what you're getting covered for. That's another type of document that they might provide to you, or you might have to provide to them. Also, tax information is another big one for all of these. You might need to show W-2 information, pay stubs, things like that. All huge file things that are all about compliance from industry, internal, and the government and law standpoint. So moving forward, we're going to dive into an org and talk about how Salesforce allows you to show compliance or report on compliance for files right now. And then we're going to talk about how File Viewer is going to help you do that a lot more functionally and better and easier and automated in order to improve business processes going forward. So give me a moment while I switch my screen over. Oh man, this would be easier if it would just know what screen I wanted in my brain. Okay. Here we go. So one more drink of water real quick. So what you're seeing right now is a file and content report from Salesforce. What you're looking at on the screen is a series of files that have been uploaded. Oh, okay. Good to know. Oh, yeah, that's right, because I paused it. How about now? Okay. So what you see now, what you didn't see before, but what you see now is a file and content report. That is something that's out of box Salesforce. This is about the only kind of file report you get from Salesforce because there's not a lot of even custom report types that facilitate file reporting. There's a few, but they're not exactly what we're going to be talking about today. You can see the fields that I deemed were slightly helpful as far as a file perspective goes. And you got your name, size, versions, information, published date, who it was created by, what type of document it is. But nothing that really helps you identify what it is. And you can see based off of my terrible naming conventions on the left that it's nearly impossible to figure out what type of document I'm looking at. And the counter argument would be like, hey, Kyle, we have a really stringent naming convention for our documents. Those are great, but sometimes they're not followed either. Or somebody might upload it and be like, I'm going to fix it later. I just have to get it in there now. That's missing information, right? So as much as I like to also rely on convention, because I'm a convention brain person, it doesn't always work because humans are humans. So now we're like, okay, well, maybe you're just not showing us the fields that are there, but let's look at these fields together and we can see how little is provided from the Salesforce side. So these are the columns I added from this report. If you look at the other columns as well, you can see that there's some stuff like archived if it's available in Experience and links and shares and stuff, but it's all related to like publicly sharing the documents or who they're viewed by, and not a lot on like what the document's actually doing, if the document has any metadata that needs to be associated with it or anything like that. So it's not super helpful. And the other thing we might say as well, I know some stuff about Salesforce. I know some stuff about files. I know if I can add fields to the files. So, and that's going to help us later too when we're talking about file viewer. But if we go to a file and we look at the fields that we've added to the file, as previously we've added a lot of tags. These files as tags is what we call these custom fields. You can see there's lots of fields on this file that we didn't see in that list. Description includes cover letter. There's tons of different use cases covered by these and tons of different fields that are available on these files. But due to the nature of the object architecture in Salesforce, we're looking at what is a content version field right now. And all of the information we see on this document report is not on the content version. So we don't get access to any of those fields at all. Whenever we're talking about reporting on metadata for the document, right? So what do? This is not great. We have a bunch of stuff that puts these fields on these files when they get uploaded, or we do it through another process, which is something we've talked about in a previous file viewer webinar, which is tagging and uploading documents, and we'll see it a little bit later. We have all those tags. We can't see them in a report. How are we supposed to know what's what? Well, in Swoop's file viewer hero. So if we were basically just to put together a basic in file viewer use case, this is like install and have those tags there and just set up a configuration really quick, takes about 15-20 minutes. You click apply on this configuration. Right now we're looking at sales documents in particular. And we can see on the left, we get filterable fields. So we're looking at tags, documents that have been tagged as SOWs. If we just click here, it'll show us those SOW documents. And you see this list of here of accounts, which is nice because if we did take the time to tag the account on those documents, we would see them. But the more important sharing information that we have is based off of like these sharing records. So we can see right now that we have an SOW shared with Burlington, and we have an SOW shared with Dickinson. So that's kind of great. We can see here really quickly what SOWs exist and what SOWs may not exist. But it's kind of frustrating to have to go into each one of these like files because there could be hundreds of SOWs you have. I mean, nobody works with just one or two clients unless you're guest lucky, because then you don't have to worry about a lot of organizational stuff. But in this case, we're pretending we don't work with just one or two clients and maybe we have 100. And so reporting becomes, or doing this type of activity through a file viewer component, reporting compliance becomes very tedious if you have to click in each of these tabs. So we've come up with a kind of a different way to do compliance reporting or reporting on relationships to objects that we think is pretty clever. We call it file reports. And so a file report, in essence, is taking the documents and the metadata and the relationships, these entity sharings, and combining them into a single place in order to get information on what does or does not exist in your organization. So on this UI here, very right from the get-go, you can select one of our existing reports if you want. So if we were to select this contacts with NDAs, you can load that report. We see a bunch of different stuff here that I'm going to talk through, but in essence, what we see is what we're looking at contacts, and we're looking at contacts that have a file that has a title containing NDA or any of the other tags that we have here. So we could even do, maybe the contract type is NDA. Clicked too fast. The contract type contains NDA, and records with documents. We can click run report, and in seconds, we've already gotten a list of which ones have NDAs. Alternatively, if we don't, we're good with the ones that have NDAs. We're not really worried about them because they already have the things in place that we need to be able to talk to them about our IP. We can look for ones that do not have that document type. So ones that do not have a file that contains the word NDA in its type. Then if we run the report, we get a list of all of these contacts that our salespeople may have missed signing an NDA for or didn't tag it correctly. Regardless if they uploaded it or not, we can't identify that document. So we need to make sure that things can get fixed. So 26 records in a few seconds that are non-compliant. We found that very quickly just by using the tags that we created as part of the configuration for the tool and the file report UI. So what if we want to build a brand new report and we want to go from scratch to something that helps us figure out where things are along in our sales process? Let's say we could just select a new object. So let's choose opportunities in this case. And for opportunities, I don't want to be super critical of all opportunities because there are opportunity stages that might not need the same type of documentation as they don't need an NDA if they're not even past prospecting or something like that. So let's just say we want to look at all opportunities where the stage is something that would require an NDA to be there. So we could say stage is equal to prospecting. And so now what we say is we want to find all opportunities where the stage is equal to prospecting that do not have, without documents, do not have an NDA, because those are also problem records, right? Meaning that they shouldn't be in that stage unless they've signed an NDA. If we're already talking to them about our IP and we don't have an NDA in place, that could be a problem. They might be trying to take the IP or do something that we can't protect ourselves from legally. So if we click run report, you get 2 opportunities that are in prospecting that do not have an NDA. If you click on them right here, it will be taken to those opportunities and we can then take action on them straight from this report view. That's awesome. That took a few seconds. We can now identify non-compliant opportunities, things that might be putting us into financial peril or something like that, legal peril, that don't fit with our internal process. Alternatively too, if we wanted to see ones that did have an NDA so we can know how far along, how many opportunities there are that are compliant, we can also run the report with documents. And of course, in this case, because I didn't prep for this section or this little thing I'm showing because I'm doing it off the cuff, there's no opportunities that are compliant, which is very bad. So don't make sure your reports don't look like this. But let's talk about something that's a little bit more complicated. So I like going back to that HR use case because HR is one of those things where you don't really think about HR documents a lot, or at least I didn't. So when I come up with these documents for HR, I'm like, oh, this is really cool because we need more than one document for a user to be compliant in our organization as an employee that can actually continuously work for us, right? And that's something that can be automated almost from end to end, because if we have the right data on the files, we don't have to have our HR team do really any work at all. We can just let them know when things are not compliant, which makes their life a lot easier because they could just sit there and look through the 100 of employees they have and see who's compliant by checking things. But we're going to make that take less than a second, because we're going to take a report, use the report output to do some pretty cool stuff. So What we're going to look at now is, and for this use case, we're assuming that all of your employees are users in Salesforce, or they're represented as users in Salesforce, even if they don't have access. This could happen on other objects as well if you had like an employee record, but for the sake of the demo, we're going to be using a user object. So obviously a user object does not have prospecting. So we're going to change this filter. And we're only going to look at active users because we don't really care if non-active users are compliant or not, or rather we don't care for this use case if they are or not. And then we're going to add another filter here too. And we're going to look where the country is the US, because we're going to look at specifically at US compliance right now. Maybe our non-US teams, EMEA teams, APAC teams are different, have a different set of documents they need for compliance. But right now we're going to take a look at our US users who are active. And the first thing we're going to look for is what their HR document type is. So we're going to see if the HR document type contains security. So basically they have a security certification. And then we also want to see if that document is still relevant, meaning it's not expired. So we're going to take this and go to the expiration date and say it's greater than or equal to today. And so what you can put over here on this filter is the same thing you can put in most filters inside of Salesforce and things, these date values, all of the things that you're putting into these values have like SOQL support basically. So if you're ever wondering what you can do, you can click here to go to the supported values and it'll tell you. I'm not going to go through all of them right now because there's a lot of stuff there. But so this would be the one document where we're looking for users who are active in the US that have a security document that the expiration date is equal to or greater than today, meaning that they are compliant, right? Now we're going to add a second document. So this is something that's kind of cool that normal reports don't really let you do. We're going to add like a bundle. So we're going to see if they have one document and another document as well. So we're going to click add a new filter set. And the most important thing here is we're going to add the new filter set and do and has. So it's saying it has this and it has this. And you can do this like 10 times, I think. So you can add a bunch of filter sets in order to have different criteria. So maybe you have a bundle that's for sales and it needs to have these sales documents, or you have a project bundle that needs to have an SOW and documents for like blueprints and things like that. It needs to have all of them to be considered complete. You could do that in here as well. But for the HR demo, we're going to add a type. Again, our HR document type, but this time it's going to be harassment. Not Z harassment. That's not a type of harassment. And then we're going to add another filter that again is letting us say that this is going to be a non-expired document. So we want this to be greater than or equal to today. So right now, again, I'm keep going through this because there's a lot of new UI here that's not like Salesforce reports. So I'm talking through it so you can know what we're looking for. We're looking for any users, or we're looking for users that are active in the US that have both a security document that is not expired and a harassment document that's not expired. So if we were to say, hey, who has this and run the report, that's a sad number because it means nobody's compliant. But what we're doing here is trying to show where you can help compliance, right? So I'm going to say without records, and we'll click run report. So we have a bunch of users. One thing I didn't do here that you could add if you were to have this in your org is take out some of these process users and things that aren't really relevant. So, maybe 50% of these users are just users that really don't need documentation, or maybe this is why you're not using the user object or an employee object, but what have you there. There's a bunch of users that don't have compliance. So let's pick on Sandra Sellington, the most ubiquitous demo name in the world, because she's definitely not a demo record. And look at Sandra's thing here. So if we click on file viewer for Sandra, we see there's no documents, right? That's unfortunate because we really want to make sure that Sandra has them and she doesn't. So we can tag and upload one and do that stuff right now. So if we do that, like maybe she does have a security training document, but it's like something I forgot to upload or whatever. So we'll say that this expires then and upload her security training certificate. And this is, you can see the upload UI really quickly. If you click done here, it's going to upload those and the tags are going to be there to show you that it's there. But that's only one document. So just a quick overview of how that works. But there's a few ways we can say like, hey, take this record and then do something with it, right? So we have a list now and that's great, but we haven't really prevented anybody from just clicking through records to see things yet. We've just given them a list of outputs that might be helpful to them. So one way we can do that, and you've probably been looking at this button from the beginning because it's the biggest Easter egg on this page, is click schedule report. So scheduling reports is pretty cool. Basically what this lets you do is take a report, and then let's look at the one. We hadn't saved it yet. So let's look at this report that we had previously saved, the contacts with NDAs. We can run it weekly, monthly, we can choose different criteria here. Basically, if you're familiar with the term cron expression, that's what we're building right now, is an expression to run a schedule. But we're going to say weekly. If we wanted it to run every day of the week, we could just click these boxes and say we want it to run every day of the week at 3 a.m. We can do that. That'd be that, create the schedule, we're good to go. And that would be the way it goes. And the next time it's going to run is going to be tomorrow at 4 a.m. And then the next schedule run is going to be, in the future. We could also cancel the jobs from here, which is really nice. You don't have to go dig through the schedules to see like when a job's going and cancel it. But alternatively, if we do know cron expressions, or we're trying to do some like light touching and take something out and put it into a cron translator, you can do that by clicking advanced. That will give you the cron expression. This is, for lack of a better word, gobbledygook to anybody who doesn't know cron expressions. So don't feel like, when I first saw this, I was like, what is this? This is just the list of numbers. But it is trying to represent what's over here, that it's going weekly, every day at 2 a.m. and so on and so forth. But you can change it here. And if you want to as well, it does not translate back, but it is what it is. So we can create this schedule. That's really cool, because what that can do is we can actually create a flow that uses this report output to then do something. So running the schedule will basically give us running it on a schedule will mean that every time it runs, it'll create this list of report results. And when those report results are there, they get basically posted to a platform event, and that platform event can do something. So for example, if we wanted to say, okay, well, now I want to use this report result to automate chatter, let's say automate chatter on a user to say like, hey, HR team, something needs to happen here. We can basically go create a new flow. This is kind of where we get into the minutia of flow types. So if you've never heard of this flow type, there's a lot of resources out there where we can help you. It's a platform event triggered flow, very similar to a record triggered flow, but we're using a platform event instead of a record. What we do here for this specific one is we type in report, and that's going to bring up the file report event. The file report event basically stores information about that individual report output. So for every report output, you get a new platform event, which means that you have context to the record you were looking for, the types of documents that are or aren't associated with it, and how it was published. Click done here. And then all we really need to do here from here out is say, hey, anytime we publish one of these, I'd like to post a chatter and say, hey, someone has not been in compliance or isn't in compliance right now. We say chatter post. And then we can say the message is like, this person is out of compliance. And then the target is going to be like whatever record came back from the report run, which is inside of our FirmWorks event. And it is called source IDs. So that's about it. That's all you have to do. And this will basically post a chatter whenever someone is, or yeah, in this case, it is someone comes back as a report result from this report. And because schedule flows are nearly impossible to run when you want to, and things are, or not when you want to, but on a live demo, it's hard to run them. I've already done this. And so we can see here, if we filter on all updates, that Sandra has some chatters that say, hey, this user has one or more expired HR documents, because there isn't one, right? And this has happened like a few days in a row now, because she's been out of compliance for multiple days. And that was all automated. So at this point, what we have is a solution that says, hey, go look for all of the users that aren't in compliance with our HR documents and chatter to them. So someone who's subscribed to that user as part of like the Salesforce chatter feature can get that on their chatter homepage, and they can work through that list instead of having to dig through a bunch of users and figure out who is and is not in compliance. So that's one really cool way we can automate this report result, to have people not have to come into the report every time or have to do admin work in order to, like, get a functional list of working users they need to update. Alternatively, what we can do is we can utilize a page layout component that says, hey, if someone comes here, they can see if they're not in compliance. The way we do that is we click on edit page. Then we'd be really quiet while it loads. I'm gonna get another drink. Then what we can do is look down at our custom components section, and these are all file viewer components right now. There's a lot of them, but today we're only talking about a few. We're going to talk about file report runner for records. We're going to drop that up here. And in here, it's going to look really scary right now, but it's fine. What we're going to first and foremost do is say, I'd like to take that report I just built, and I built these a day ago, so I'm just going to choose this test one. That's the one that we ran for that other one. And that's going to be the configuration, or sorry, the report that I saved. So basically, it's this report that I just rebuilt the other day. It's the same one, but I just built it today for this thing. So, and then we go to right here. So this is where we kind of get into the minutia of what it means to be compliant. So right now it looks like it's fine. It says no missing documents, because if the report has results, we have it set to success. So we're going to say, but we know that if the report has results, it means that something bad is happening, like meaning they're not in compliance. That record is not in compliance. So we're going to say that this is set to error. And then if they do not show up, that means that they're good. They're not part of the problem. So that's going to be success. We're going to change this to missing HR documents as the warning here. And you can already see it changing on the left-hand side right here. It says no missing documents, but we're going to change that to this. And then this one is going to say no missing HR documents, because if they don't show up on the report, it means that they're good. They're safe. They're marked safe from HR's wrath. And then some of these other ones we can just leave the same because they're not going to affect what we're seeing right here. But now if we click save and we go back to the record page, we can see that there is that component on the top right telling us that this record is not currently in compliance. And this will show up on every user. So you don't have to worry about building it on every page. Or every user's page, because that's how that build page thing works. We can see that they're missing a document. We can come here and see. We can also click here. This will be the report name. If you want to name it something really helpful, you could put that there. You can also put like lots of text in here. This is a rich text field, so you can put an image. You could put a video of how someone could fix a problem. You could put a really funny GIF, or maybe a really annoying GIF if you're trying to get people to fix an issue. But what we can do here now is say, oh, Sandra did have her harassment training, so I'm going to upload that right now, and I'm going to make sure that it's for next year, so I don't need to have her do it again for a year or however long that works. We're just going to upload another document here, and once that's uploaded and we refresh the page, we should see something a little bit different on that report component. So now we have two documents here. And now we see that there's no missing HR documents. So we can know that Sandra's record is good to go. Right now, it's currently up to date for the year. Both of those things are accurate. And we can validate that they're here by looking at this file viewer component. So not only can we have automated processes be like making people's lives easier, we can have active compliance reporting showing up on people's page layouts. Because at the end of the day, a lot of compliance activities are about limiting the time you're out of compliance, as opposed to 100% of the time always being compliant, because we're talking about the real world here. Like there's time periods where people need to upload a doc to be compliant, things like that. Limiting that time means that less often you're caught with, like I said earlier, caught with your pants down, as opposed to having everything you need for whenever you need it. So that's the end of the live part of the demo here. I'm gonna circle back to the slides really quickly, and we're gonna kind of review everything, and then we'll have some questions. So let's talk about what compliance is again in a second. It's anything that your org or industry or government or law needs you to provide or to participate in that ecosystem. So rules, industry compliance, regulations, laws, things like that, that's all compliance. So anytime you're participating in a system that requires you to have something in order to be a member of it, that's technically compliance. So how does file viewer help compliance? So we saw earlier that Salesforce reporting on files isn't really super helpful when it comes to how we can report on compliance with the files that we have in the system. But file viewer adds to that reporting capability. And it basically allows us to take all the metadata that we create on files and say, hey, where does this stuff live? Do we have it in the right place? Is it tagged the right way? Is it easy to find? Is it organized? And all of those pieces are what file viewer is going to help you do. And then what's next? Here's our obligatory call to action. It's always great to go visit the App Exchange and install FileViewer. You get a free trial. We're here to help you if you want to get compliant today and understand how in or out of compliance you are. So that's all I have today for everybody. If you have questions, we're going to be going to questions right now. Feel free to type them in the chat, or I can unmute you and you can ask your question if you're not nervous about everyone hearing your voice or your background noises, I guess. But thank you for coming to the webinar today. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. And I believe we're going to be sending this out to people who attended, and it'll be available on our website or somewhere for people to also download later. But again, thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful, weekend whenever that comes around. Yeah, and if you have any questions, I'm just going to hang out for a second, and I'll answer them. But don't feel like you have to stick around if you're good to go, or you need to hop to another meeting or something like that. We don't have a demo video. So Nita asked, do we have a demo video for our mapping product? And again, thank you for coming, Nita. But we don't have a demo for it right now. But if you want to, we can either set up a call and demo it for you, or something pretty quick, because it's one of those products that we can demo the use case for you really quick. And if you want, we can record a quick video, but it's usually good to kind of have a little context around it. So feel free to let us know if you want to set up a demo, and we can figure that out. Just email me at kyle@getfirmworks.com, and we can figure out when to demo that for you. Thanks, Blakely. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. It's really cool to see this stuff happen and also have context for exactly what it's supposed to be doing, because sometimes it's really easy to say, oh, yeah, we help you with compliance. You're like, what does that even mean? So it's our pleasure. All right. Well, if you all have any more questions or anything like that, just reach out. And otherwise, I hope, again, you have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.